Poem 41, Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. Matthew 16 verse 6, And Jesus said to them, Watch out for and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Matthew 23 verses 1 to 7, Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, The teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must be careful to do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulders. But they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. Everything they do is done for people to see. They make their phylacteries wide and the tassels on their garments long. They love the place of honor at banquets and the most important seats in the synagogues. They love to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and to be called Rabbi by others. Matthew 23 verses 13 to 15. But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut the kingdom of heaven before people. For you do not enter, nor permit those wanting to go in to enter. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you travel around the sea and the dry land to make one convert, and when he becomes one, you make him twice as much a son of hell as you are. Matthew 23 verses 23 to 28, Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you pay a tenth of mint and dill and cumin, and neglect the more important matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. It was necessary to do these things while not neglecting those. Blind guides who filter out a gnat and swallow a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you cleanse the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee. First clean the inside of the cup and the dish, so that the outside of it may become clean also. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you are like whitewashed tombs which on the outside appear beautiful, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and of everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you also appear righteous to people. But inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Self-reflection. How do I perceive and understand the warning of Jesus to watch out for and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees in my own life? Do I tend to focus more on external appearances and rituals, like the Pharisees, rather than the true essence of faith and righteousness? Am I careful to practice what I preach, or do I sometimes fall into the trap of hypocrisy like the teachers of the law? Do I burden others with heavy loads, expecting them to carry the weight of my expectations, without being willing to lend a helping hand? Do I strive for genuine humility, or am I driven by a desire for self-importance? Do I shut the doors of the kingdom of heaven for others by my actions or attitudes? Am I inclusive and welcoming, or do I create barriers to faith? Am I focused on outward displays of religious devotion, neglecting the more significant matters of justice, mercy, and faithfulness? Am I mindful of the impact my influence may have on others' spiritual journeys? How can I align my beliefs and actions to avoid the pitfalls of hypocrisy and instead embrace a genuine and authentic faith? The Pharisees were a powerful and influential religious group in 1st century. They were the guardians of the Jewish law and the interpreters of the Jewish people's faith. They were also critical of the teachings of Jesus and his disciples. The characters of the Pharisees that were vehemently disliked by Jesus and his disciples can be summarized by their hypocrisy, self-righteousness, and lack of genuine faith. Jesus repeatedly condemns them for their strict adherence to religious laws while neglecting justice, mercy, and love. The Pharisees were notorious for their outward displays of piety, making ostentatious prayers and fasting publicly, but lacking true devotion within their hearts. Their obsession with legalistic interpretations of the law blinded them to the spirit behind it. Additionally, they sought recognition and praise from others rather than humbly serving God. Jesus criticized their judgmental attitudes toward sinners and social outcasts, warning his followers not to follow in their hypocritical footsteps. While some Pharisees had genuine intentions, Many embraced a rigid interpretation of the law that clashed with Jesus' message of compassion and salvation through faith alone. Jesus and his disciples had a strained relationship with the Pharisees due to their strict interpretations of the law and their tendency to criticize Jesus and his disciples. Here are some of the characteristics of the Pharisees that Jesus and his disciples disliked. 1. Hypocrisy. The Pharisees were often described as hypocrites because they would publicly preach one thing but privately did another. For example, they would preach about the importance of tithing but would not tithe themselves. 2. Legalism. The Pharisees were so devoted to the law that they had become overly focused on legalism and forgotten about the spirit of the law. They would try to find loopholes in the law that would allow them to do whatever they wanted while still technically following the law. 3. Self-righteousness. The Pharisees had a tendency to be self-righteous and judgmental of others. They often looked down on those who weren't as religious as they were and would criticize them for not following the law as strictly as they did. 4. Pride. The Pharisees were proud of their knowledge and status in the community. They would often boast of their religious knowledge and look down on those who didn't have the same level of understanding. 5. Greed. The Pharisees were often motivated by greed and would use their religious authority to enrich themselves at the expense of others. Never lead your life in the way of the Pharisees. Avoid their characters and wrong teachings that mislead many to hell. Let's read the poem. Beware the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees, their teachings may mislead, their actions displease. They sit in Moses' seat, with authority they speak, but their deeds contradict the words they preach. Heavy burdens they impose, on shoulders not their own. Yet they themselves won't lift a finger, their true colors shown. They seek attention and honor, at banquets and in synagogues, but their hearts are far from true, their motives a mere facade. They travel land and sea to make one convert, but their teachings, twisted. 'Cause more harm than hurt. Twice the sons of hell, they make their followers become, their false teachings breed darkness, not God's kingdom. They shut the kingdom of heaven, denying entry to the sincere, in their zealous pursuit of converts, they foster despair and fear. They focus on minor matters, tithing herbs with great care, while neglecting justice, mercy, and faithfulness, unaware. They cleanse the outside, while inside they're filled with greed, like whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the surface, but in truth, a misdeed. Appearances deceive. For within lies hypocrisy and deceit, their righteousness a veneer, their actions far from discreet. Woe to them, Jesus cries, for their misplaced priorities, tithing mint and dill, neglecting justice and mercies. They focus on the minor, neglecting the weightier things. Their hearts entangled in empty rituals and vain offerings. They cleanse the outside, while inside remains unclean, whitewashed tombs, a facade that can't be unseen. Their hearts are full of greed and self-indulgence, blind to the truth, lost in their own arrogance. So let us learn from these cautionary tales, to seek true righteousness, where love never fails. Let justice, mercy, and faithfulness be our guide, and in our actions, let God's truth reside. May we not be like the hypocrites of old, but follow Jesus' teachings, with hearts bold. For in his words, we find the path of grace, and in his love, we discover true embrace. Let us be vigilant and discerning, learning from their mistakes, seeking truth and righteousness, avoiding the path they take. For true faith is not in outward show, but in the heart's sincerity. Let us strive for authenticity, embracing love and integrity.